everyone, welcome to Flash Discussions. I am Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
Dan, welcome back to a Discussions program.
Thank you, it's good to be here.
So, before we get started, I want to mention technical difficulties. As you can tell, we're on audio today. We're doing all the discussion shows on camera now, so nobody worry. That is still the new format, but Dan's been having some technical difficulties tonight on his end. You might also hear a little bit of a lag between us, so bear with us. We're doing our level best, but we wanted to get this out as soon as humanly possible, and we will give you our opinions and ideas on the first episode of Flash. Of course, talking about the pilot today, and Dan, you have seen very little of Arrow, yes?
I have seen the first episode of Arrow, and that's it.
Okay, cool. And you know, originally I had kind of hoped to have somebody that had been watching Arrow because, of course, this is a spin-off and they're going to cross and stuff. And yet, it mattered more to me to get somebody that knew Flash, especially because now that I've seen the pilot, I mean, I'm glad we went this way. Not only because I love talking to Dan, but because Dan knows a lot of Flash. And now that I've seen the pilot, I'm like, wow, they are really mining that source material and have a lot of reverence for it. So I think it's really important to have somebody here, if we can, that really knows their Flash. And of course, I've seen Arrow, so I can bring that to the table. And it's also kind of neat to talk about this. Now, you should watch more Arrow, Dan, because Arrow's great. But it is kind of fun, at least right out the gate, to do this with somebody that doesn't really know Arrow, because, and this will be the first point I'd like to make, I think, and I want to really encourage people to watch this show, I think you can watch this show not knowing Arrow, and that it's not relying on being a spinoff at all.
I had no trouble just picking up the show and watching it and having a great time and appreciating all the things they were doing story-wise, all the Easter eggs and stuff about the Flash universe. I was very pleased at how accessible it was.
I think in the same way the Marvel Cinematic Universe is bringing comic book storytelling to the big screen, right now on the CW, DC is doing the same thing with television. Flash is another show that is set in the same universe as Arrow, and you can enjoy both, but you don't have to, and you go to Flash if you want different things, or if you're in a different mood, or if you just, you know, like both. But it's sort of like a lot of comic books in the big two, where, you know, you read Daredevil if you want one thing, you read Fantastic Four if you want another thing, and you don't have to read them both.
Yeah, exactly. I'm loving that, you know, the DC stuff even more so, at least with those two shows, what I've seen of Arrow. Like, that show's very much a grounded, grim and gritty kind of thing, and this thing is the polar opposite, whereas, like, the Marvel movies, they'll do different genres, but the tone is pretty consistent. I feel like the tone of these two shows couldn't be any more dissimilar.
And yet, it doesn't feel like they can't exist or shouldn't exist in the same universe, because real life is like that, right?
Right, exactly.
I love that. I said this on my how we're feeling on this, but I think that in the very same way that Green Arrow is kind of a Batman show, I think in some ways this is kind of a Superman show. Like I think this is, or at the very least, this like Flash is Superman to Green Arrow's Batman.
That's interesting, because my first impression was that this is a Spider-Man show in the DC universe.
Yeah, and I knew you were going to say that, and let's start there, because I'd like to kind of discuss both of those things, because I think you're right, but I think it is both. I think, you know how I say a lot that Captain America is a sort of like what or in Marvel Cinematic right now is sort of like what I wish we could get for a Superman movie.
Yeah.
Where just he just is like really altruistic at heart, and he sticks to his guns and his morality, and he's trying to be a symbol of all of that, even though he lives in a world that is constantly pushing against that. I think that Barry Allen has exactly that same thing. I think that Arrow, that the scene with Arrow, really brings that to the forefront when he says, and this is a thing that I picked up on a lot because I've been watching the progression of Arrow. Arrow starts off as a vigilante that kills people, and he's only recently started trying to be more of a heroic character and stop killing. He started from a really damaged vigilante place. And he's kind of got that in common with Batman. Now, Batman, of course, doesn't cross that line. He doesn't kill, but he still has that pseudo vengeance, or that in the case of Arrow, that straight up vengeance thing. Whereas with Barry Allen here, he has more of that kind of Captain America thing, where and Superman thing, where at heart he's just a good person. And so when he gets the like the means to do good in the world, he doesn't have that baggage. He doesn't have that damaged thing that Arrow does, where he's gotta go hurt someone. And I also think that part of that is because he has like like unlike Spider-Man, and this is the way I think the place where I think he is quite different from Spider-Man. I feel like he learned the responsibility lesson before he got his powers, and in a way different way.
Yeah, you have a good point there, and I picked up on those kind of themes that you were talking about in the episode, especially in some of the dialogue scenes between Joe West and Barry, specifically after the car chase. Uh, he makes a big deal to say to Barry, like, you know, Joe West is kind of a more cynical guy because he's obviously a police officer that deals with crime every day, and I think he's kind of like the bridge thematic wise between Arrow and this, where he's like, Barry, you need to start seeing the things the way that they actually are, instead of being so imaginative and imagining that like all of these crazy scientific things are actually possible when Barry's worldview is eventually validated at the end. I can
Yeah.
definitely see where you're coming from there. But the thing with Spider-Man that I really noticed the similarities with were Barry's personality, and all of the supporting characters are analogs of Spider-Man characters. Um, like Joe West is Captain Stacy. He's a surrogate cop father for Barry Allen. Uh, what Andy Thwain is Ned Leeds. He's a coworker that's vying for the heart of the Barry's love interest, just like Betty Brant in the early Spider-Man comics. His we'll talk about who we think the big bad for the season is going to be, but I think it's going to be that Wells guy, who's a CEO, mad scientist, crazy guy that creates all the villains and lost
Yeah.
his company, just like Norman Osborn.
Yeah.
There's
That's right. Good call.
it's very similar in all of those sort of things, and it's on top of that, it's already got the inherent similarities between the two universes. Like the science fictiony tone of Spider-Man and the Flash have always been kind of
Yes.
similar, and the villains are very similar. The Rogues Gallery, they're all kind of like a ragtag team of criminals who are kind of losers that form a team and try to fight the hero. That's always been a similarity between the two of them in the first place, anyway. So all of those already things that are apparent in the source material, combined with making Barry a socially awkward kind of person that's fun loving and likes to have a little bit of a sense of humor. He doesn't have the kind of quippy thing that Spider-Man has when he's in the costume, but he's a lot more fun loving and humorous than the Barry Allen I've seen in the comics. And he's got the tragic mother and father issues from an early childhood, just like Peter does. So those were the similarities that I was thinking about when I was watching it. Um, I don't know. Like even Iris, she reminds me a little bit of like Mary Jane from the Raimi movies. How she's like the girl he's known his whole life, but has never been able to get with, even though he really likes her. And like the score of this reminded me a lot of the score of the
Yeah, me
Sammy
too.
Raimi Spider-Man movie. So I don't know. All of those things combined, I was just thinking Spider-Man the whole time.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Aesthetically, especially, it's hard not to think Spider-Man white, and clearly there's a lot of influence there, even like color palette and stuff. And I was surprised by the score. I thought that it was very, very Elfman, and I was kind of surprised by how derived that was. No, you're absolutely right. It's kind of interesting that because I didn't pick up on a lot of the parallels in the supporting cast that you're talking about with Barry Allen himself. It's kind of interesting that he has a lot of similarities even to Peter Parker, but I do feel like he comes at it in a very, very different way.
Oh
He
yeah,
doesn't seem as angsty at all. Like, and this is just my first impression watching the pilot, because we'll see where he goes, and it, my instincts tell me that his worldview will continue to be validated, kind of like Captain America's and Superman's are. On the other hand, it is certainly possible that as time goes on, he'll find it to be more difficult to be a superhero than he thinks it will. The big thing that was new here that I've not seen much that I really latched onto is I feel like we are turning the whole loner like lonely superhero lifestyle thing on its head,
oh interesting.
because you get to the end of the episode and Barry Allen all of a sudden finds so much purpose in being a superhero and having a costume and like finally having some kind of a lead on what happened to his mother, that he's finding his like not just a reason to live, because he has that whole thing where it's like, I haven't been really living, like my whole life has just been about trying to prove to everyone that my dad's not a murderer, which is instantly sympathetic. Like I instantly cared about all that.
Yeah.
And when you get to the end, he in his voiceover, and they didn't have to spell this out. You know me, I'm always not sure about voiceovers, but I like the whole he's actually talking to Arrow thing. But then when you get to the very end and he's just voiceovering, I'm like, I don't know if we need that. Maybe we could get that. But in that voiceover and just in the story, and you kind of see it progress without that. He's talking about how he's changed and the world has opened up for him now that he has this. Most of the time, when like now he gets to have a personal life because he's a superhero.
That's true.
That's awesome. That's fascinating. That is one of the most optimistic things I've ever seen in a superhero thing. It is challenging the idea that that you can't be selfless and have a personal life at the same time. This is the antithesis to Spider-Man and RoboCop and everything else that's ever done that.
That's true. That's a really good point, I think, Ashley. And I think the Spider-Man analogs, I think, that I was talking about earlier, about how, like, Joe West is kind of like Captain Stacy, not in just how he's a surrogate father to Barry in here, but he also kind of parrots the Captain Stacy line from the end of the first Amazing Spider-Man, where he's like, keep my daughter safe, don't involve her in any of this. I think all of that stuff might get turned on its head eventually
Did
as
I
well.
miss that? Does he talk about her?
He does. Once
Oh,
he
I missed that. Okay.
Yes, once he finds out that Barry's the Flash, he says, "Don't tell Iris about your secret. You have to keep her safe." So he's not allowed to say any of that stuff to her. He made a promise, just like Peter did at the end of the first Amazing Spider-Man movie.
Yeah. So those things are going to come in, but it is pretty cool that like he finds his purpose in being a superhero, and it's not the same kind of conflict.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
it's really different.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, I think those kind of tropes that we're talking about will have the potential to be turned on their heads. I think, a
Yeah.
lot of characters are keeping things from each other in here. And we'll talk about Iris's secret, because I don't really understand why she's keeping secrets that she does from her father in here. But I feel like a lot of the relationships between these people, I think the actors had very good chemistry together, and I bought that, like, Iris, Joe West, and Barry were a surrogate family and they really
Me
love each
too.
other. I thought the actors played it very well. I think that kind of relationship is not going to be able to survive with them if they're keeping these kind of secrets from each other. Especially once we get into who Eddie Tharn is going to be later on. We'll talk about who I think the Reverse Flash is going to be. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do with that. But he is named for the second Reverse Flash, who was the archenemy of Barry Allen. So those are secrets that they're not going to be able to keep from each other. Whereas, like, you know, uh, the Spider-Man thing, like, he's able to keep secrets from people from a long time, or so he thinks anyway, right? Um,
Yeah.
I think those are things that they're going to deal with right away, coming up soon, and turn on their heads. So that'll be interesting to see where they go with all that stuff.
Since we have the same main producers from this as we do on Arrow, I'm expecting a lot of parallels between the two shows.
Hmm.
Because that show, of course, deals with secrets a lot too. You have to when you have a secret identity, and when you and like with immediately I can see a contrast where you have Arrow, who likes to kind of compartmentalize, and he never likes to tell anyone everything. And they, by the way, with that show, they do a really good job of using that as a device to keep stuff from us that they haven't decided what they're going to do yet with the 5 years on the island. So like all of a sudden we'll learn some big thing, and he's just been keeping it from everyone because the writers didn't know what it was yet. But it tends to work. Whereas with and of course that gets into trouble sometimes. Sometimes it seems in that show that if only he would trust people more, he wouldn't have some of the problems he has. Whereas this show, I kind of suspect that that we're going to have maybe the reverse of that, where Barry Allen wants to tell more people things and discovers that they can't handle it, or he shouldn't tell them. Or I mean, like there's not a lot of that in the pilot yet, but I'm just extrapolating. I think we might be going to those sorts of places.
I hope so, especially given the nature of we see Wells and how he's sort of trying to manipulate everybody in every sort of way. Barry might find out that he can maybe learn a little bit from this guy, where like
And
he's
and
gonna
doesn't
have to somewhat, if he wants to keep this secret, he's gonna have to manipulate people, right?
well, and doesn't he immediately stand for the truth?
Exactly, yeah.
This is a character who's all about uh, we can't just and he has personal motivations for this, and of course a lot of our worldview and our morality stems from our initial motivations and then the experiences that we have based on that. Barry Allen comes from a place of nobody knows the truth about my dad and he's being punished for it, and no one will accept the possibility of the supernatural, and that's why my dad is being incarcerated and why I haven't gotten to have anything like the kind of life I wish I could. And so if there is any brooding, if there was any broodiness at all to this character, it came from a place of if only the world could accept things, if only they were more truthful. And what's really interesting is that West thinks he has that,
He
but then he
does.
finds out what the truth actually is, and it turns out that he doesn't have that, and he thinks he's being realistic. And I also think it's really cool because this is an evolution of this universe. Because at the beginning of Arrow, you got the sense that we would never get this kind of stuff in this universe. That this was a grounded world, and we would not be doing superpowers, and we didn't go there, and it was going to be just like the Nolan films. And then we get to this place, and it's almost like this self-aware thing where the universe itself, in spinning itself off into this pseudo science fiction thing, says we have to embrace the comic book stuff. This stuff does exist in these sorts of things. And I'm not saying that you can't do grounded comic book stuff and never go there, but I do think it's really fun that they're kind of making that a thing about the show as much as about the characters.
Yeah, and I think back to one of the things you said earlier about how uh, Barry, his initial motivation is kind of like he wants to be a truth teller, and I think the thing that makes that part of his character really sympathetic and really shine is that instead of brooding about it, like you said, it doesn't get broody at all because he channels that into something positive. He works really hard, gets really intelligent, and becomes a forensic scientist, which is his job is to catch bad guys through science. I think that's a really sympathetic thing for a character to do. Instead of sitting around feeling sorry for himself, he tried to make the system work better. It failed him and his father, but he dedicated his life to trying to make it work better for everybody else.
We love really conflicted superheroes these days. You know,
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
it is in this genre, it is our favorite thing. The hero who comes from this really, really damaged place and has to get onto a road of redemption and isn't sure if he is the hero or the villain. And and a lot of times, at the time, it does ultimately get really optimistic. But I think that there is still a place for this kind of hero. And once again, I looking at parallels in contrast between this and Arrow, there is, and I don't want to make this too much of a Destiny thing. And by the way, I really resist Oliver's line about the lightning bolt chose him. I really don't like that.
Yeah, that's gonna. We'll talk about that when we get to worst moment because
Yeah,
that's.
I really don't like that. But you go to the beginning of Arrow, and the universe, and again, this is not a Destiny thing, this is a writing thing. This is we are exploring ideas by having the universe do stuff to characters. If you do this, there are consequences. So at the beginning of Arrow, Oliver Queen is this playboy kid who has no sense of responsibility at all and is sleeping around on his girlfriend and stuff, and the universe punishes him for it. At the beginning of this show, the universe has already punished Barry Allen, or you could say just this thing accidentally happened to him. Although we know that it's time travel, and we know that it's somebody who knows him later, so the universe could still be punishing him in the past for something he does later. We don't know yet. We
Right.
don't know that. That is possible. I just thought of that. But forgetting that for a minute, the universe in this show begins with throwing the protagonist a bone.
Hmm.
And that immediately sets them apart as totally very different things. That we started from this really broody place with Arrow, and here we're starting from this much more kind of light place where there's still really heavy emotional stuff, but Barry Allen gets to be the Flash because of the kind of person he is, just like with Steve Rogers and Captain America.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the more important thematic demonstrations of what you're talking about is at the beginning of the episode, he gets into a fight with those bullies, and his father asks him if he won, and obviously he lost the fight. And, his mother's kind of angry at him for it. And then his mother gets killed, obviously, and his dad gets locked up. At the end of the episode, the same scene happens with his father in the jail after he had become the Flash, found his purpose in life, and actually won a fight for the first time. And I really like that. I think that that's kind of demonstrative of what they were trying to say with the episode, where it was like, you know, this kid, in general, you need to kind of stand up and do something with yourself to win the fight of, I don't know, life or find self-actualization, that kind of thing, right?
I love that we are starting the show right out the gate with a really good role model.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
We just don't have enough of that. I mean, I just love that,
Right,
you know.
yeah.
And it's nothing against anything else. I love Arrow, but I also like variety, and I miss this kind of thing. And as I said, I think there's still a place for it, and I don't think it's sappy, because this character is going to be obviously just as challenged as Oliver is in keeping to his principles. Right away, we have the hero versus God motif. We have other people who are getting powers see themselves as better than everyone else, and this is a guy who stands up for the little guy. Again, I know I keep going to Steve Rogers. You know, I said Superman earlier, but I'm finding a lot more stuff with Captain America. He like right at the beginning, with what happens to his mother, and also that whole bully situation and everything. We've already given him a backstory and a history where he has really good reasons for having that perspective. And so if he got hit by lightning and got these powers, he wouldn't immediately see himself as above everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love that we get to start from that place with a character like this. And also, and I know I get giddy about this in a way other people don't. Part of it's because I'm a dad, I guess. This is a family show.
Oh,
This
yeah,
is
it's
this is
awesome.
a show you this is a show that not only you could sit down with your kids and watch, but you should sit down with your kids and watch. I feel like unless I'm proven wrong in the next few episodes, that this is going to be the kind of character that like with Peter Parker, kids are going to grow up and they're going to want to be this guy.
Yeah, I'm with you. I didn't really think about that just because I don't come, like you said, you're a dad. I don't come from the same perspective as you. But now that I'm thinking about it, like, yeah, this is a show that if I had kids, I would definitely show them. And, I hope it doesn't get too heavy on the relate. I mean, I do and I don't. Like, if they do the relationship stuff really well, then that would be awesome. But I think that's the only potential, like, family detriment that we might see in upcoming episodes. Like, the drama gets a little too heavy. Kids might get bored with that kind of stuff if it's not done well, right?
I agree with you. That is a CW thing. I am really impressed with that network for getting as far away from it as they have, but there's always still going to be remnants of it.
Right.
And the thing is, that's a matter of accessibility, right? And it's not it's not just CW. There's relationship stuff in Gotham. I don't think is working very well.
Right.
It's not like just because there's a romance or a love triangle, it's geared toward like the teen angst crowd. But it is easy to take pot shots at CW for that because that's what they used to be known for the most. And with Gilmore Girls and in Smallville and pretty much everything for a while.
Yeah.
You've got to expect a little bit of that, of course. Like I said, accessibility. We want people who aren't comic book fans to also watch the show. We want to have multiple reasons for people to come in. One of my favorite examples of this, as I've said before, is always Lost, which you can watch on multiple levels. And part of the reason that show was so popular is because you were able to draw in the crowd that wanted to see who Jack was going to ultimately get with. I didn't care about that. I cared about other things.
Right.
But that show got the ratings it did because we brought that crowd in. They're trying that with this. I always say with that, just as you just said, just do it well. That was my one big reservation. I hate that I like Iris and I don't like the love triangle business. Um,
Hmm.
like when we finally introduced her boyfriend at the end and stuff, I was just like, yeah, I don't need that. Like it was already typical. You already had the like they've been friends forever, and he wants to tell her how he feels, but he gets cold feet. And Dan, you know what I always say? There's a lot of times in this kind of thing where it feels like forced drama, because if characters would simply communicate, we could get past that. But they're not allowed to communicate, because we've got to drag it out. Now you could say, well, Barry, as you said, sort of socially awkward. I didn't pick up on that. I thought that he was a lot less socially awkward than Peter Parker. But
Yeah, that's fair.
maybe a little bit. So like he doesn't know what to do with that, and it is awkward if the girl that you've been friends with forever just got finished saying we're like brother and sister, and then you were to say, oh yeah, but I'm in love with you and I've never told you that. I mean, that's maybe not the moment, you know. That's maybe not the time. I get that, but can you keep up that kind of thing for very long before I finally say, or before I stop saying, oh, it's just dragging this out so that it can keep that drama up and it's not actually coming from a character place.
Right. I really hope that, see, the kind of thing with Barry and Iris is like they did this with the New 52, and they did it with a lot of the classic DC Comics couples, is they broke them up and they
Because
have
no
this like,
one's allowed to be married anymore.
right, but they have this weird tension with them while the superhero's dating other people, and you're just like, I just want to see these people get together. And I suppose that's supposed to be like the drama that drives you wanting to come back and read the comic every month. I suppose that's the writer's perspective, and I can be sympathetic to that. But from my perspective, I know Barry and Iris. They're like the gold standard couple of the DC universe, at the same level as, like, Clark and Lois for me anyway. Like Barry and Iris are a gold standard DC couple, and it's just like I want to see them together. But at the same time, like, I guess as long as we don't put Iris in peril in every episode, I'll be fine with them not being together as a couple, because that could get really old too, right?
I'll tell you, man, I'm gonna be really impressed if they don't. Because this season in Arrow, we've got Oliver finally dating Felicity, and they like the idea of them eventually getting together has been hinted at here and there a little bit, but like she from the very beginning is the one that is constantly getting kidnapped or in peril in some way. And importantly, when we introduced Barry Allen in Arrow, the girl he was after and that looked like they almost might get together was Felicity.
Oh,
So
okay.
if they don't put and first of all, I think it's really interesting that we've got the two polar opposite superheroes. They are friends now, and they will have both dated the same girl. That's kind of cool.
Mm.
But because that's a motif with Felicity, I'm gonna be really impressed if it's not also a thing with Iris.
Yeah, I really hope they don't.
Especially because you guys have a lot of the same writers working on this show. I don't know. I'd be really surprised if they didn't go there.
That's true. I just have a little bit more.
I'm with you. I don't want that to happen, but
I just have a little bit more
brace
hope.
yourself because it will. I
Right.
think.
I just have a little bit more hope, I guess, because like I don't know how much Green Arrow Jeff Johns has written, or like what kind of reverence he has for that character. He, Jeff Johns says all the time that Barry Allen is his favorite superhero of all time, and the Flash is his favorite thing to write. So I like this episode. I could see his passion in the script for the Sword
Oh,
and
me
Material.
too. Yeah.
Um,
But Jeff Johns was not writing the majority of Arrow. I mean, he's done a couple, but like the same people that showrun Arrow are primarily showrunning this, and co-wrote this with Johns. So their influence will be all over this.
right, and I did see the credits for the next episodes that they've listed, and Jeff Johns is listed as a co-writer on all of them. So I don't know how long he'll stick around, how many he's writing.
Yeah.
So I hope he sticks around for as long as possible. But
Well, maybe that kind of crap wouldn't have happened if we had Jeff Johns on more of Arrow. I don't I
right,
don't
yeah.
know. Well, you do still have Kreisberg and the other guy, and I don't know. So since they're already seeding so many like mirrors and parallels and things to Arrow, it seems likely that Iris and Felicity will have things in common.
Oh, okay, interesting.
That's all I'm saying.
Um, but yeah, I was just really impressed with how well they nailed the tone of the Flash comics, because the crazy over the
Yeah.
top science fiction stuff I was really impressed with. And I've heard from some people that know science better than I do, because I don't know like complicated physics and stuff well at all. Um, that some of the science is bogus, and like some of the things that they say aren't are theoretical, are actually like you can actually do that, and some of the like science that they name doesn't do what it says it does. But I don't know, like I'm kind of used to comic book science. Like Barry Allen's a guy that can like vibrate his molecules through and like go through walls and stuff. Like I don't know, I kind of rode with it. I wasn't really thinking about it the whole time.
It's consistent with Arrow also because like even though that's supposed to be originally in the first place a somewhat more grounded thing. I mean, we've got Oliver on the island in mid first season using these herbs to heal Slade Wilson that he got from Yao Fei, saying, "Oh, Yao Fei had these herbs that cure anything. Get those and I'll give them to you and you'll be fine." And then he was. And then, of course, second season, you got the whole Mirakuru thing, which makes you a completely superpowered and messes with your brain, and makes you practically immortal. So that pseudoscience stuff already in this universe.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel even better about it, I guess. I mean, it didn't bother me in the first place, but I guess if it's consistent, that works even better.
Like we've already had that here. Yeah. No, it works. I mean, I do think it's a little bit hokey that you have this that you have the shockwave of the particle accelerator that and by the way, the effect of that was fantastic. The airplane that exploded and stuff, like that
Oh,
was really
all the effects in this in general were awesome.
so the shockwave goes out and is kind enough to not go past the city limits.
That's true.
Now maybe it gets hit by water. I don't know. I mean, I forget looking at the CG. Are we on a coast here?
Uh, in the
Are we
comic
surrounded by water?
in the comic book, Central City and Keystone City are twin cities like Minnesota.
In the Midwest,
Yeah, in the
right?
Midwest. Yes, it's a
And a
Midwestern
name
city.
like Central City, it shouldn't be on a coast. I don't think we're surrounded by water. So if that's I just don't remember. But if that's the case, and forgive me, I only had a chance to watch this the one time before we started talking about it. But if the shockwave stops at the city limits and nobody outside of it gets hit just because this takes place in Central City, that's hilarious.
That is really funny.
I gotta say, let's go ahead and start talking some like connections to source material and things like that.
Oh, sure.
One of the things that I really appreciate right out the gate is that first of all, I think this is a better pilot than Arrow. You just saw the Arrow pilot.
Mhm.
I think this is a better pilot than Arrow, and I think and that's not knocking Arrow because it started from nothing, and this got to start from not only a universe that pre-existed, but also we introduced this guy in 2 episodes and got to kind of feel him out before we had to give him a pilot. So they were very, very prepared already. That's awesome. That's sort of like the same way I feel about Arrow and Buffy. So you've got that, and because of that, and we know that people will buy it, and that we can sell this show because people responded a lot when we started making Arrow feel like a comic book show. We don't have to start this show with it's kind of Flash. It's not because Arrow was like that. It was like we can't call it Green Arrow. We have to call it Arrow. We have to change the name of the city from Star City to Starling City for no good reason. We have to call Dinah Lance Laurel Lance for no reason. This show doesn't do any of that stuff. First of all, calls the show The Flash. Not trying to make up some other stupid like running quick or something. It's just called The Flash because that's what it is. And secondly, it's called Central City. They didn't have to make up something. They didn't have to be like, oh, we'll say Northwest because it's different.
Yeah, and I was really pleased that they mentioned Keystone City too as being the place that Tharn transfers from. I was like, yes, we're going to do Wally West City too, because
And that city may have been mentioned in Arrow somewhere. I'm not sure.
oh, okay,
Like there. All I'm saying is there are a lot of Easter eggs and things that you will notice in this show that you will think they were really clever for doing that Arrow already did.
oh,
There
okay,
there will be plenty of that because okay, so this is the other big distinction between the shows. Arrow is we finally get to do just straight up DC universe. We're not going to do Superman and Batman, but everything else is kind of up for grabs. Flash is the Flash.
hmm
You know what I mean? Like Arrow because Flash has a rogues gallery. Flash has its own like mythology and stuff. Green Arrow has some of that, but they've gone to a bunch of other places. They're doing Suicide Squad. They're doing all these different things that they're doing Ra's al Ghul. They're borrowing from everything. Flash and they've borrowed from the Flash. Flash gets to just be the Flash.
Right. I mean, when you talk about the pockets of the DC universe, it's kind of like the Green Lantern section, the Batman section, the Superman section, and Flash is one of those. It's got its own city mythology. There was a Flash family at one point before 52, just like the Bat family, and I really hope that they do a lot of that stuff. I mean, we've already set up Weather Wizard's origin in here. Because in the comic books, this guy that gets the weather powers here, that's the Weather Wizard's brother who invents the technology, and then dies, and then gives the technology to his brother, who becomes the Weather Wizard of the comics. So,
So it's probably gonna be like that.
yeah, so the real Weather Wizard is still out there somewhere. We just haven't seen him yet, and they mention his brother in the episode.
So you know they're going to go there. Yeah, and I feel like you can be pretty confident that that they're going to go comic book places, especially for the really iconic stuff, like the stuff where you don't really want them to mess with it too much. And once again, you can expect that because of what they've done with Arrow. Like we had a Black Canary before Laurel will probably eventually become Black Canary, and at first it's like, why is somebody else Black Canary? And then it's like, well, that was always a legacy character.
Right.
So like this show is going to do the same kind of thing.
Right.
Do you think?
So
Do you think eventually? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What I was going to say earlier, like with the Weather Wizard thing, was they're going to do the Rogues teaming up against the Flash some point. I'm confident we'll see, Trickster, Captain Cold, Mirror Master, Weather Wizard, Top, all those guys. We'll get the whole Flash Rogues gallery all teaming up and going against him. In addition to, I have a feeling, we've seen set pictures already of Reverse Flash on set fighting him. I have a feeling that'll be the season finale, and he'll be the big bad, obviously, because we're pretty confident that that blur at the beginning is Reverse Flash of some kind, because that's straight out of Flash Rebirth. So I figured the Rogues teaming up will maybe be the big bad of season 2, but we already see in the preview at the end of this we're going to get Captain Cold, and he looks fantastic.
Well, I would be very surprised if they saved Reverse Flash for the end, just because of the way scheduling usually works for shooting shows.
Oh, okay.
If they have set pictures right now, that means it's more likely that that's like mid-season cliffhanger.
Okay, cool.
Because they'll still be, because it's like they're not shooting the end of the season right now. That's not usually how this works, unless they started early enough but that would be very unusual. I think it's a lot more like, see, when you sent me those pictures, my reaction was, holy crap, they're going to show them that early?
Yeah, and we'll talk more about predictions and stuff. I think I know what their rough kind of plan might be, or what they're going to do, because it's very interesting how they set up Reverse Flash. Like I'm not sure who it is, even though I know the Flash source material, and they named a guy after the Reverse Flash. It's very interesting. So it'll be cool to see what they do. I'm very excited to see.
Let's talk a little bit more nitty gritty plot stuff now before we get to categories. My very, very favorite thing about this episode, and this is somewhat just a me thing, I guess, is John Wesley Shipp as Barry Allen's father. He's wonderful, and I was excited when he got cast. That's such a coup. That is the actor who played the Flash in the '90s show, and I loved him in that show. It's not a great show. It was kind of meandering, and once it tried to get away from once it finally got away from the '89 Batman feel, because it tried to be a really gritty Flash show that just didn't make any sense. It's kind of really ironic what we have here, because that show tried to be like Tim Burton's Flash.
That's strange.
Well, by the end of it, and you should watch it because it's really interesting. And
I've seen some episodes of it, and they do a callback to when he gets his powers in that show in here, yes, where he runs on the track.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of callbacks, and we'll talk about all that stuff because, and another thing I would call a callback is the way they shoot. Now, this is from Arrow also, because we saw, you don't know this, but his getting his powers, his getting electrocuted and going into the coma is actually how they end that story in Arrow.
Oh, okay.
And then in this, they elongate that scene and they show us more of it.
Oh, cool.
Which is kind of cool. So I'd already seen that, but then we get to see more of it. Things about the way they lit that and the way they shot it are very similar to the way it was shot and lit in the original show. So that's a cool thing. Like you said with the track, that's all very similar. I was reminded, I tweeted about it. I was really surprised that they did that. It looked the same. And also, I forget her name, but the scientist lady who is kind of his sidekick in the first show. I don't know if you've heard this yet, but the sidekick lady who's in that show is coming back for this show as the same character.
That's awesome.
So I thought Ship was fantastic, and when he first got cast, I was like, "That's a neat coup," but I expected him to just be like a cameo or a flashback or something. I didn't know that he was going to be a regular character, like recurring. Nor did I think that he was going to be one of immediately my favorite characters in the show.
Yeah, I thought he was pretty good for what he was given. I don't think they really gave him all that great dialogue in either scene he was in. I don't know,
Oh,
like
really? I thought it was fine. Okay, all
I
right.
don't know, like in the when Barry was
Maybe I'm just excited that it's him. You know what I mean? Like maybe I'm just letting my nostalgia blind me. I thought that was really good.
like I don't know, the scene in the prison was one of my favorite scenes in the show, except for the way that like Barry acted the crap out of that scene. I thought Gustin Grant is that his name?
Yeah, and
Um,
he's phenomenal. I didn't expect a lot of stuff that we got out of him. I mean, I thought he was okay when we saw him in Arrow, but God, he's tearing it up in this.
yeah, so I thought he was really good in that scene. But I don't know. I felt like Ship wasn't matching him.
Oh, really?
I
All right. I'll take a look at it again. I thought he was great. That was my big note was I love John Wesley Shipp in this.
no, I mean fair enough. I mean maybe you saw something and I didn't, and vice versa. I don't know. Like I just felt like Barry was like almost in tears, and Ship just had this kind of like smug smile on his face, like yep, this is happening. Like I don't know. I didn't feel like they were on the same emotional page at all. And like if that's like his son and um they're having that kind of a moment. I felt like he should have reacted a little bit more emotionally, but
Well, I'm not gonna argue with you. I mean, you're wrong, but I'm not gonna argue with you.
okay.
No, no, that I don't see it, but okay. Like I said, I might be blinded a little bit. Just using Ship in the first place is really neat, partially because, or mostly because Flash is a legacy character,
Yeah,
and so it is kind of neat that his dad was extra canonically a Flash.
I
I
kind
just I just love that immediately.
yeah, I kind of hope that after he gets out of jail, like presumably Barry will prove his innocence at the end of this season. I hope they find some way to like explain that his confrontation with Reverse Flash like gave him powers or something. He can be like the Jay Garrick of this universe. That would be
Me
really cool.
too. I really want him to have somehow been a Flash, or be a Flash, or something. What other things do you want to go to specifically about the episode? Any like supporting cast stuff you want to talk about, or anything else like that?
Um, Most of the other stuff that I was hoping to talk about, I guess I put in the categories and like comic book references because there's just like one every other scene in this. Um,
Yep.
but in terms of plot stuff, I kind of put this under my worst moment, but I have two of them because one of them's a funny one and one's one that I really didn't care for. But I guess I just really didn't care for the fact that Iris doesn't tell her father that she's dating Eddie for no reason. Why? Why does she need to keep that secret from? I understand that like her father can be a little bit hot tempered, but like the guy, this putting the fact that I know he's going to be a supervillain out of my mind for a minute. He seems extremely competent, confident, and you know. Like that's the kind of person. If I was a police officer, I would be fine with my daughter dating. If I was him, like can she
Yeah.
not date anybody? I just thought it was really strange.
That's fair. I didn't think of that, but now that you say that, fair enough.
Like she's just like, no, we can't tell my dad that we're dating. Why? For what reason? I just don't understand where she was coming from there. Maybe there's a better reason that like we'll hear about in another episode. But I just thought that was just a weird thing for her to do, kind of deceptive. Because I was like on board with her character entirely until that point. I was like, she's being deceptive for no reason. Is she just a compulsive liar? Like, what's up with this?
Yeah, that's fair. Did you think that Iris and Barry had the kind of potential chemistry I thought they had?
Oh yeah, I thought they were great together. I thought she had zero chemistry with the guy who's playing Tharn. I thought
Yeah, that's where I was with it. I was like, really? Okay, all right.
Yeah, like that was the thing about it. I was just like, those are the two things that made me not like her. In contrast to all the other scenes she was in, she's dating a
Yeah,
guy she has no chemistry with, and she lies to her dad about it for no reason.
yeah, and that is a script throwing a character under a bus, right? Like
Yes,
you don't. You're what's happening is the internal logic is breaking down there, where you're not buying that character would do that, so you almost can't blame it on the character. You have to blame it on the writing.
yeah, exactly. Because otherwise, she seems like a pretty genuine person. Like I loved when she was introduced, when her and Barry are kind of exchanging banter, and they're doing that kind of family thing where, and good friends do this too, but even more so with family, where you kind of like uh, make fun of each other in a loving way, where she's saying how she's gonna have like a muffin top and how Barry's a dork and stuff, and
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is exactly the opposite of how I've been feeling about Barbara and Jim Gordon in Gotham, where they are supposed to have known each other for a long time, but I feel like they just met. These two, I feel like they've known each other forever, and I feel the same way about her dad.
that's a good thing. That the actors played it well enough that you buy that these people like they took Barry into their household when he was
You
really
know
young.
what? That's another really interesting thing.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry I keep talking about Arrow because I know you haven't seen this, but I keep coming up with these parallels between the two shows, and I think they're on purpose, so I have to mention them.
Mhm.
The thing with Iris and her dad and everything. Once again, this is the flip of what we've got in Arrow, where now he's not dating Iris yet, but you know that'll happen. Also, Oliver's not dating Laurel right now, even though he used to. But you got the Laurel Oliver relationship with her dad, Detective Lance, who hates Oliver and hates the Arrow. And in this situation, this guy that is the father of the girl that our hero is in love with raised him and knows he's the Flash.
Yeah, and loves him.
Good stuff.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And I'm not saying this is all good just because they're doing the opposite. I'm not saying it's like, oh, they took everything in Arrow and they flipped it around. It's all natural. It all feels like that's where they ought to go with it. I haven't seen this with a lot of spinoffs. A lot of spinoffs is just kind of a lot of spinoffs. It's this new show feels slightly different because we have this other character that we're following, but it's still the same type of thing. This is not the same kind of show. It's superhero, but it's the other side of that. It's not
Yeah,
like it's not like Angel or like Xena spinning off of Hercules. It feels like a totally different thing.
right. And I'm with you on all those points. One of the other things that I didn't really care for, and I want to get your opinion on this because you've
Yeah.
seen more of Arrow than I have. The scene with Oliver Queen I thought was completely unnecessary and was very cornily written. I thought the dialogue was terrible in that scene. Um, I don't know, like it was just so like preachy and on the nose for like a guy like Oliver Queen, this greedy vigilante, to talk about like guardian angels and like how Barry can inspire people. I felt like Barry could have came to the conclusion that he should be a hero on his own without having to go talk to Oliver Queen. Maybe that's just because I haven't seen their interaction in Arrow and like how close their relationship got in that two-parter or whatever. But I don't know. I just thought like everyone else around him was kind of saying, besides the guy in the wheelchair, was kind of like, yeah, you should use your powers for you know something useful. And that's something that's like I feel like that would have been where he wanted to go in the first place. Like when the guy Wells tells him that he's not a hero, Barry walks out on him, and you get the feeling that he like he doesn't agree with him at all, obviously.
I'm conflicted on it because I actually like a lot of things about that scene, and I hate the one line, and then a lot of the rest of it worked for me. So a couple of things. First of all, yeah, it's a little forced. It's a little easy. Yeah, the lightning hit you like chose you thing does not seem like something Oliver Queen would say. I don't feel like that's really inside his worldview or wheel. I don't know where that comes from. I don't really
Yeah.
see Oliver Queen doesn't seem to me to be like Clark Kent in Smallville, where he's consistently trying to figure out what the universe is telling him he's supposed to do. I don't think he's exactly that. I don't feel like he's exactly that.
Well,
So I'm not.
thank the Lord that he's not like that because that would be the worst show ever, right?
I don't know. That just I don't think that's him. So I'm not sure where that even comes from. Unless I were I mean I have to read it differently than what it sounds like, right? Where it's like
Yeah.
if he had found some way, I mean, I don't know how he'd say this in as few words as what he said. If he could find a way to say it, to articulate it the way I did earlier when I said that it's like the universe is throwing him a bone, in that sometimes if you do the right thing, you're rewarded for it. You can't say that, like, it's not a fate thing. It's just sometimes things quirkily work out and you don't know why. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If he had somehow sort of had more of that kind of thing, I would have sort of. I do think you would have appreciated that scene, as you said, more had you seen last season. My favorite line does come from that scene, and I'll tell you what it is when we get there. But I'm with you that it's a little bit forced. The thing is, I think part of its placement. I kind of wish we had, and I forget that does come before the guy in the wheelchair tells him he's not a hero. Yes,
Yes, I
I think
can't
it's
remember the
before that.
sequence of events
It's
because
okay.
he
If
does
it's not,
he does reverse when he's on the radio with him with the tornado, and he says "Run, Barry, run," and tells him to use his powers like a hero.
yes, yes. Obviously that's part of his master manipulation plan. Which, by the way, I didn't see any of that coming. I had a total what the heck moment at the end, and I loved it. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, that was
wait a
my
minute,
favorite
because
part of
suddenly
the
I'm
episode.
feeling, yeah, me too. Suddenly I'm feeling for this character, because I mean, like he's very sympathetic before that. He seems to almost be having the Peter Parker thing, where he's like learning something about responsibility. He's got to clean up his mess, and then all of a sudden he's probably the big bad for the season, and I'm like, what? That's awesome. So anyway,
Yeah,
so I'm thinking that if that scene happened before he said that, that's the problem. Is that it should have happened after, because we know that, as you said, Barry should come to this on his own, but maybe he needs validation, maybe he needs reinforcement, you know what I mean?
but
So he goes to the other person that he knows that has done the sort of thing that he's thinking about doing, and who, like has made it work and has discovered, heroism
yeah,
on his own, just to kind of reaffirm, yes, this is what you should be doing.
my
So I don't
my
know.
my problem with it is like he never needed validation for any of his other worldviews before. Like Joe West tells him to not look at the world the way he does, and Barry's like, "No, I know the way that I look at the world is right." And he doesn't need any validation from anybody else. Nobody else believes him in that these theoretical physics things, and that his father's innocent. He was alone in all of his beliefs there. But that superhero thing, he needs validation. I don't know. I feel like that's out of character for him.
That's fair. I mean, being a superhero is a much bigger deal. I think it's radical. It's a thing that only one other person has done, and he was a killer first. So, like, I'm with you though. I don't think it's played quite right. I will say, however, that as forced as it is, I do. I would really have resisted it if Green Arrow had not somehow shown up in the first episode, and they maybe should have come up with a better way to do it, but that is the proper way to spin things off. Like when you do a spin-off, you really kind of want the other show to kind of give you their blessing. I think that's really classy, and so I always get excited on a spin-off show if we do see somebody from the other show. But I'm with you. It could have been handled better.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. That those were the only two like negatives I really had with the show, dialogue and plot wise. I mean, the guy who plays Weather Wizard's brother was kind of underdeveloped, but he's just a plot device in the comic books anyway, and I think he works as a plot device in this. So I didn't really have any kind of problems with him. I mean, there is a little bit of talk about how he thinks he's God and stuff, and I think that works in the thematic context of the story as we had discussed a little bit earlier.
Yeah, yeah, but not so much of a character thing. I do hope that whole gods versus heroes thing, and I'm sure it will as time goes on. Barry Allen actually gets to get himself into that argument, because this weather wizard guy says that to somebody else, and then Barry Allen shows up and stops him, and they have no dialogue together really.
Oh, and in that scene too, I laughed pretty hard when Joe West has a Samuel L. Jackson line in response to him saying that.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
He he just sounded like Samuel L. Jackson is the best man at swearing on the planet,
Yeah.
And when you have someone like quippily swear to someone when they give this like big elaborate monologue, that's just where my mind goes. I don't know. I was just
Yeah.
like, oh, that's
I,
totally a line written for Samuel Jackson.
when it's something I noticed that I thought was kind of neat, but it didn't really pay off all that well. But I thought it was I don't even know if they did it on purpose. But like early on when Weather Wizard first starts robbing banks, I thought it was really funny. By the way, let me backtrack. I thought it was pretty funny at the end when the guy was like, was it West or whoever it was like why would God need to rob banks? And he suddenly goes, you know what? You're right.
Yeah.
God
That
would
was
not
really funny.
need to run. When I was watching it, I tweeted, "What does God need with a starship?"
That's awesome.
That was just wonderful. Anyway, so he robs that bank, and or I forget if it was when he robbed a bank or someplace else, but he pulls a gun on someone and says, "You're not fast enough to outrun a bullet," and then he pulls a gun at the end on Barry Allen. And I thought that was really cool because he had just told somebody earlier that they couldn't outrun a bullet, and now he's pulled a gun on somebody that can. And then he
You're
gets taken.
confusing two different characters there.
Are they two different characters? Oh,
Barn is the
okay.
guy that pulls the gun on the robber and saves Iris's laptop. That's why she gets him. That's one of the reasons why she's somewhat attracted to him when she sees him.
Right, right. But he pulled a gun on somebody different.
Yeah, the thief that stole
Oh,
the laptop was a different person.
oh, okay. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we had a plot device guy. I didn't realize they weren't the same
No, they're
person.
both plot
Okay,
device guys. It's easy to mix them up.
so that probably was in no way whatsoever a payoff for that. Okay, anyway, never mind. As I said, I'm doing so many of these shows now. I can only watch them once, and I'm my the degree of probably making mistakes is a little bit higher.
Oh yeah, that's
Sorry
fine.
about that. Anyway, let's go on to best moment, worst moment. What was your favorite moment for the episode, Dan?
My favorite moment. I have two kind of ones. My favorite moment, just because of the special effects, and I just had a stupid grin on my face when this happened, was the ending montage of the Flash running, and him saying, "My name is Barry Allen, and I'm the fastest man alive." I was like, "This is setting the tone for the show. It's bright, it's colorful. The Flash looks fantastic. The special effects look like nothing I've ever seen on TV before. They're fantastic, and we're using his catchphrase from the comics, which is fun and lighthearted. I don't know. I felt like that kind of encapsulated everything I loved about the show in one little action montage. And my, other favorite scene, I guess, we had mentioned earlier, Barry and his father in the prison. I thought that was the emotional highlight of the episode.
I'm gonna go with the jail scene. But runner up is really I didn't know who the big bad was.
Yeah,
when you
that's a good
when you
one
get
too.
to when you get to the end and he looks at the newspaper from 2024, I just was out of my mind with giddiness.
Me too.
I was like, wow, it's gonna be this kind of show. Like, I feel spoiled, man. Like, I feel like somebody just gave me a Christmas present.
Oh, believe me, I did too.
And I'm not a Flash fan. That's what's so cool about this is that it's infectious. Like this is the kind of show that turns you into a fan of a character like this.
Right.
And what's really cool, and I think you would agree with me because of the things that you're praising. It looks like we're saying this after one episode. It looks like you're going to be able to watch the show, and it'll be sort of like the '90s Fox X-Men show, where if you watch nothing but this, you could call yourself a Flash fan.
Oh, you could, because this episode alone pulled from, and I'll talk about this more when I talk more about the Reverse Flash stuff and Predictions and Hopes. This is pulling from Mark Waid's run. It pulls from Jeff Johns' run. It pulls from Flash Rebirth when Barry comes back, written by Jeff Johns. It pulls from Crisis on Infinite Earths when we're
Yeah.
looking at the newspaper. It pulls from all the big Flash runs and moments that I love and have read, and it all is contained in one episode. It's so much fun.
We only touched on effects. Would you agree with me? Let me throw this in there. Would you
Sure.
agree with me if I were to say because I keep saying this and I keep thinking that I might be engaging in hyperbole and yet I keep agreeing with this. So I want to know what you think about it. Um, if I were to say that this feels like either a condensed big screen Flash movie or the first 45 minutes of a really good big screen Flash movie, I feel like it's screen worthy.
Oh, I agree.
I mean, like now, I used to say it sucks that we haven't had Flash on the big screen now. I don't even need it anymore. Like, I feel like I got it already. Like,
I feel like these. I just kind of want the DC television shows on the CW. Obviously, I haven't watched any of Gotham thus far, and that wouldn't really connect with what they're trying to do with the movies. But these shows are good enough. The actors are good enough caliber. At least the two leading men, that
Yeah.
they could be Justice League members and stand next to Cavill and Affleck and be fine. I think.
Yeah. Now we already know they're not going to do that. They've confirmed
Right.
that.
I'm. It's just
Yeah.
wishful thinking on my part.
And
I wish.
oh yes, I know. On the other hand, what's really cool is even though it's not Batman and Superman, and I guess I'm partly saying this because I am enjoying Gotham now. Um, I really kind of feel like if these shows stay at this caliber, and if they were to add a third or a fourth, if the movies aren't good now, it's not as big of a deal.
Right.
We
Exactly.
got awesome DC every week, so whatever. I like if Batman vs Superman isn't all that good, I can enjoy the novelty of seeing those characters together, and then I can come back to something better. I'm not saying it will be bad. I hope it's great. I'm just saying
Right.
that like it's gonna be hard to be like it would be weird to be fanboyish about it and be like oh man this is horrible because we're getting great DC on TV right now. It's
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's it's wonderful. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's go on to worst moment. What was yours?
My
I think I
worst my worst moment, I talked about the Iris hiding a relationship thing earlier, but my kind of nitpicky funny thing was
knew.
the police sketches are way too accurate. They're photorealistic.
That comes from Arrow. That's an Arrow problem too.
I was like, come
Yeah.
on. It looks like you took a photo and put it in like some photo editing program to make it look like it was drawn, and that's probably what they did.
You didn't, or somebody just like traced over a guy's face.
Yeah, I was like, there's no way someone would give that accurate of a description of a man's face, especially if he had a baseball cap on.
My worst moment is I don't know, it's tied. I mean like the one that you mentioned earlier with Iris and her boyfriend. I'm kind of with you there. And then I like the Green Arrow scene was my third favorite scene besides the one line I didn't like. And the one line I didn't like is bad enough to make it worst moment. So my favorite, so one of my favorite moments is also my least favorite, or I should say, one of my favorite scenes is also one of my least favorite scenes, and then I can break it down to moments. So, anyway, okay, let's go on now to quotes. Did you have a favorite quote, Dan?
My favorite quote was, "My name is Barry Allen. I'm the fastest man alive." I know that's just his token catchphrase, but like I said, I just had a stupid grin on my face where I was like, "We're doing Flash from the comic books in this show, and this is awesome."
Interestingly, I thought the script was really solid dialogue wise, and yet I didn't write a lot of things down. I didn't find a lot of things to just be like one liner quotable. But I guess I'm gonna go with Arrow's take your own advice, wear a mask because it's just good continuity. The reason he wears a mask now is because Barry Allen made him one, and I always thought that the idea of Barry Allen going, yeah, obviously you should wear a mask is really funny. So because he used to just spray paint his face, and then Barry Allen was like, "You should wear a mask." And so I don't know, I kind of appreciated that, and it was fun because like he gives this Barry Allen gives this nice nod in that scene, like yeah, I was gonna do that anyway. So I don't know, I like that. So let's go on to predictions and hopes. Do you have any predictions, Dan?
Yes, I do. Okay,
Okay,
so
fine.
the thing that this episode did that really blew my mind that I really loved was, okay, we have these two characters, Eddie Tharn, and he's obviously named for the archenemy of Barry Allen, the Reverse Flash. And there is also a third Reverse Flash. The Reverse Flash is also a legacy thing. Each Flash has their own Reverse Flash.
Oh,
And
cool.
Wally West's Reverse Flash is named Hunter Zolomon. And in this episode, they took Hunter Zolomon and Eobard Tharn, as he's named in the comics, and dispersed their character traits between Harrison Wells and Eddie Tharn in this show. So in the comic books, Hunter Zolomon, if you notice when they talk about the accident that supposedly injured Harrison Wells, you see they flash over to a cage that says Gorilla Grodd on it, and in the comic books, Hunter Zolomon is injured in an accident with Gorilla Grodd in the city when Wally West is fighting him, and he asks Wally West to go back in time on the cosmic treadmill to fix his problem, and Wally West refuses because he doesn't want to mess with the timeline, and he tries to do it himself, and an accident happens, and he gets the power to travel through time. He doesn't have super speed; he just goes through time. So
Wow.
And then Edward Eobard Tharn is a crazy Flash fan from the future who can run just like the Flash. He tries to replicate his powers. So they kind of gave Harrison Wells the power to travel through time, like Hunter Zolomon, but he's also from the future, like Eobard Tharn is in the comics. And Hunter Zolomon is a former coworker of Barry Allen's at the precinct in the Flash comics as well. So they kind of changed some of their character traits around, so you don't really know who the true Reverse Flash is going to be. There's a lot of hints at who's going to be the true arch enemy of Barry in the show, which is really interesting. Because you name a character Eddie Tharn, you're like, oh well, that's going to be the big bad, and that reveal at the end, you're like, oh man, I don't know where this is going. That's what was so cool about it for me.
Yeah, and it's really interesting looking at this for me because like I keep picking up on things like that in Arrow where I'm like, oh, I know where this character goes in the comics, and I wonder if they're going to take them there here, and then they'll do something kind of similar but not exactly the same thing, so they're still like messing with my expectations. And then I know little to nothing about Flash, so like I'm watching this show kind of like a lot of people were watching Arrow. Go, I don't know who any of these people are.
That's going to be the cool thing for you though. Like I have all the comic book references when we get to that, and we're calling them
Yeah.
flash facts for the show because
Yes,
we're awesome.
flashbacks.
And I have a whole page of them written down.
Oh my
So
God.
I'm gonna be listing them for a while if you don't mind.
No, that's okay. This will be even a longer show than normal, and like discussions has continued to be an hour this year. We I guess, just have too much to say, so that's I don't know. That's what's happening. I hope folks don't mind. So skip around. We don't mind. So what what else? Okay, so predictions. I don't have a whole bunch yet. Obvious the big obvious one is for me is when do we get a big rogues team up? How long is it going to be before we've introduced so many rogues that we can put them all on a team together? I would imagine season two. I would imagine we introduce a bunch of them this season. The next season we have. What I hope to see is that eventually we get the rogues as a season big bad.
Yeah,
That like,
yeah.
full season they've got all these machinations going on, and Flash keeps having to come up against one or two of them at a time, but they're never all together. That's what I'm hoping to see.
Yeah, I'm with you. I hope what they end up doing is like introduce one each episode when we're not, dealing with Reverse Flash. And Reverse Flash is kind of like the A plot for the season, and that will
Yeah.
resolve the Barry's mother thing and his father thing. And then by the season finale, we'll have the Rogues forming, and then they'll be the big bad of season two.
I gotta be honest with you. As I said, I'm surprised we're doing Reverse Flash this early. They seeded his backstory. Well, they told us his backstory, verbatim, in Arrow already, and so we already knew about the Reverse Flash thing. And
Oh, cool.
I kind of expect like they showed us part of that flashback, and I kind of expected that would be a thing that they would make us really wait on. And it's sort of like the whole Coulson death thing at this point, since they've already told us so much about it. I'm like, I hope this season he knows everything about that. Like,
That's interesting that like you've been waiting on it for a while and I'm like first introduced to it, so we have completely different expectations about it. You know,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, exactly. No, it's surprising how much stuff we already knew Now, I also should say though that even though I knew a lot of that stuff, I didn't feel like I had to wait around until they got to the stuff I didn't know about yet.
Mhm.
Like that's a thing that was impressive about this episode is that even if you have been watching Arrow and you know that stuff, and a lot of I would imagine that a good percentage of the audience is that way. I didn't feel like, oh god, I gotta wade through origin stuff. Getting the rest of it was perfectly interesting, and there wasn't any place where I was seeing like 3 or 4 minutes, together of stuff I've seen already. It was all like we're just expanding on it. We're just giving you more of it. No, the coma. Dan, like we found out about so he gets knocked unconscious with the lightning bolt, and then he goes in a coma, and he's been in a coma since then. So all the rest of the season of Arrow he's in a coma. And
Oh,
so
okay.
like
That's
all
funny.
that time when the episode started, I didn't know if he had his powers or not.
Oh, interesting. That's
At
cool.
the very beginning, it's hard to tell if he is if we're because it says now. So I was thinking, and I'm not sure I would have put that timestamp on it because from my perspective, that's still like months ago.
Hmm.
because I've seen because this is right after he got we find out that this is right after he got back from his trip to Starling City, because Iris asked him about it, and I was like, okay, now wait, did he just wake up from the coma? Does he have his powers, or like what's going on? And then they do the origin, and I went, oh, they're giving us the other side of that now. Because they did that whole he's always late for everything thing. Like, he's obsessed with getting to see the particle accelerator in Arrow.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he misses his train, and he shows up late, and he doesn't get to go. And so so it looked like in Arrow. Now this seems to be maybe not exactly what happened now. Well, no, it is, because I guess like the lightning mixes with stuff. But like he it looked like in Arrow what the idea was that because he's late, he gets to become the Flash, which I thought was a really cool idea,
Yeah,
because
that
it
is
was like,
cool.
if he had shown up to the particle accelerator on time, he would have been where everybody else was watching it, and he wouldn't have gotten struck by lightning. So the irony is, if he wasn't slow, he wouldn't have become fast.
Yeah, like his mom said, it's better to have a good heart than fast legs.
So anyway, all that's pretty cool. Let's go on to flashbacks. Dan, you said you had a whole page of them. A lot of things are pretty obvious, just as far as these are characters that were in the comics. What things did you find that were a little bit more hidden than that?
Okay, well, Iris has a line where she says, "I'm ready to see this Atom Smasher smashing." And Atom Smasher is a character. I think he's the nephew of the Atom, and the Atom's an Arrow.
I wrote that one down.
Okay. So then we have the obvious ones like Barry's mom being killed is from Rebirth. Barry Allen being late is a trope. The crime lab resembles the Flash Museum from the comics, which is what I thought was really cool.
Oh,
Um,
I didn't catch that. I was going to ask you about the Flash Museum and if you thought we might see that in this.
I hope so. Okay, it would be really cool if they end up turning that precinct into the Flash Museum eventually. That'd be really cool because
Maybe
it's got the big statue in front of it,
hopeful.
the way it's drawn a lot of the times the precinct, like the architecture of it looks really similar. So I really hope that's what they do.
Maybe what they'll do, maybe they'll have like a big fight there and they'll blow it up, and then it'll get rebuilt as the Flash Museum.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah, I really want to see that happen. So other things they mentioned Keystone City, which is the city that Jay Garrick protected in the Golden Age Flash, and then later on Wally West takes over. Um, they Linda Park, who was Wally West's wife, is giving a news report. Of course, the Martin brothers; those are Clyde is the brother, was a weather wizard. He discovers this technology, dies, and then Mark Martin becomes a weather wizard. Caitlin Snow, who's Danielle Panabaker's character, his scientific assistant, that's the civilian name of Killer Frost. So she'll probably become her eventually.
I'm sure,
Um,
yeah.
Cisco Ramon is Vibe, that other guy. Both of his sidekicks are superhero characters, which I thought was interesting. Um,
Yes, and he was introduced. He and she were both introduced in Arrow.
oh, okay, okay. So
You know,
this
'cause
isn't
we
new to
actually
people that.
no, just so you know, we got to actually meet them before Barry does.
Oh, okay, interesting. That's awesome. I wonder if where they'll eventually find their home in this universe because like Killer Frost is a Suicide Squad character, right?
Yeah. Now that you say that, that's interesting. And we have Suicide Squad and Arrow, so it'd be really interesting if she wound up there
Yeah,
somehow. That's weird. They strike me as the Fitzsimmons in this.
yeah. But one of them is like really morbid. Caitlin Snow, appropriately, she's really cold.
That's true. Yeah, I really liked that scene where she was like, where he was like, "Why don't you ever smile?" And she was like, well, all these horrible things happen, so this is the best I can do. Deal with it."
Oh, and quickly before I move on to my other comic book references, one of my hilariously bad things from this episode where Barry succeeds at dispersing a tornado, and that actress looks at Harrison Wells again in the wheelchair with this creepy smile, and the camera lingers on her for like 3 seconds, and then it focuses on Harrison Wells' face instead, but you can still see her face smiling out of focus in the background for another 3 seconds. It's awesome. But anyway, there's a cage that says Gorilla Grodd on it, which also references the origin of the third Reverse Flash. There's a sign for Ferris Air. I'm pretty confident that we're probably going to get a Green Lantern show out of this because Barry, Oliver, and Hal are all good friends in the comics. So if you, that would be ideal.
Dan, I was a little bit saddened when I found out that the Supergirl show isn't actually probably going to be in this universe, because I thought it would be awesome if we did space stuff in this universe. Now that we started with from Grounded, and now we've got pseudoscience, and then we could go all the way to space. Green Lantern would be the way to get us there.
Yeah, and how cool, Jeff Johns, wrote a script for the Green Lantern movie, and Warner's didn't feel confident enough in it that they would let him use his draft of the script. If he's show running a Green Lantern show, how awesome would that be?
Yeah, well, it would finally put a cap on that whole, oh, you can't do Green Lantern on screen, not nonsense. I don't know. It still probably wouldn't be the show I would want, because I don't think they would probably have the budget to have it always in space. But
Right. I would imagine it would kind of be like the movie where they're in Coast City a lot, like the Silver Age comics, but it would probably be better than the movie infinitely.
yeah. Well, I don't think that's that hard, really.
Right,
But
exactly.
anyway, okay. What other flashbacks do you have, Dan?
My other flashbacks are Flash running in a circle to create and disperse tornadoes is a trope. He does that all the
I
time
had
in the
that one.
comics.
I had that one, and I got really excited about that because I was like, "Hey, that's a thing I know." I felt like Captain America and Avengers. I get that reference.
Yeah, I thought it was so cool that they did that in the first episode. I was like, that's awesome. Um, and then in the newspaper, of course, they reference Barry's death in Crisis on Infinite Earths. He's wearing the new 52 costume in that picture, which I really hope we get like that costume. Because it looks like the 52 costume, but it doesn't have the armored look to it. The only difference really between the classic Flash costume and the 52 one, if you take the armor away, is he's got the chin strap thing, which he already has on this costume anyway. The costume
Yeah.
he has in that picture is bright red. It's got the white symbol with the yellow thunderbolt instead of the, I forget what color the background is on this costume, but it basically looks like a comic book costume. So I hope he gets that one eventually. And the last reference was there's a small headline on the newspaper that reads Wayne Tech Queen Inc. merger complete.
Wait,
So
say that again. Yeah, sorry, you cut out a little bit. What?
there's a smaller headline on the newspaper that reads Wayne Tech Queen Inc. merger complete.
What?
Yes. So Batman
That's
exists in this world.
stuck. No way, man.
Yep.
I missed that. That's awesome.
Yep. So
Because here's the thing. Here's the thing. These guys do not mess around when they do stuff like that.
yeah, I know.
Like, they don't just do little references. They're all, well, they do, but when it's something that major, that means there is the possibility of, well, I don't know. I mean, I guess they did do like a little Harley Quinn cameo, and they've said they can't really use her as a major character. So this could be like that. Maybe they can't use Bruce Wayne in the show, but it just seems to me like they wouldn't do that unless they could maybe do something with it. I don't know. That's kind of exciting.
It is exciting, and that's why I took the Ferris air thing kind of seriously, and I wouldn't have either. And I talked about this with a little bit before we started recording. The Flash is seated in the pilot of Arrow. Linda Park, Wally West's wife, is giving a news report, and when I watched those back to back, when I watched this with one of my friends from college, and I was like, whoa, they were thinking that far ahead. So yeah, I mean, that would be so cool if we end up getting a Batman show about Batman. That would be awesome. It would be weird to
Well,
have two Batman shows on the air at the same time, but
I doubt they'll let that happen, but it might not preclude the notion of having that character in Arrow somewhere.
that would be awesome.
Like Gotham. I want to say Gotham's never been mentioned in Arrow, but I could be wrong about that. Maybe it has. I mean, a lot of the other cities have.
Once they bring in Ra's al Ghul, like they haven't done that yet, but it's confirmed that he's going
It's
to
not
fit
just
in.
confirmed. We've seen pictures of what he looks like.
Oh, okay. So like, I don't know how you don't mention Gotham once you start getting those people involved. Right?
I don't either. Yeah, unless Starling City is your Gotham in this universe, where Ra's al Ghul has existed for like hundreds of years to try to destroy Starling City.
that seems a lot less grandiose, doesn't it?
As Starling City's favorite son, you will be ideally placed to strike the heart of injustice. Anyway, okay, let's go ahead and go on to trivia finally, shall we?
One last thing I wanted to mention was a guest star
Yes,
that I noticed.
Yes, yeah, and I didn't mention guest stars because a lot of everybody in this are just kind of major regular characters. But yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The guy who plays Joe West's partner that gets murdered is Al Sapienza, who plays Marty Spinella, the head teachers union lobbyist in House of Cards season 1, and I was very pleased to see him because he was good in that.
I missed that. Good call. Yeah, neat. Okay, Dan, did you have a trivia question for this week, sir?
My trivia question has to do with one of my favorite Flash villains who's teased in this episode. Okay, so in one version of Gorilla Grodd's origin, a meteor falls from space and it's torn to two pieces in the atmosphere and it's falling down. One of them hits Gorilla City and makes all the gorillas intelligent and obviously creates Gorilla Grodd. But then the other part of the meteor lands in another part of the DC universe and gives another villain super intelligence. Who is that villain?
Ooh, good question. Dan, I usually pick questions from the episode. I knew you would mine all the good stuff. So I didn't do that this time. This time, my question is more about superhero TV at large, and this is an easy one. It is what superhero series, live action series, and as far as I know, this is the only one. If you can think of more than one, tell me about it. But what live action superhero series prior to this one also called superpowered people metahumans?
Oh, interesting.
That's the
Not sure
question.
that I
And
knew that.
actually, that's a thing we didn't mention, Dan. That metahumans is a DC Comics thing.
Oh yes, of course. I don't know why I didn't think of that.
That's like what they call their version of mutants, except they're usually not born with it, but that's what they call them, metahumans. Anyway, so those are our two trivia questions. If you think you know the answer to either or both of them, you can send them. Please don't put them in the comments now. What we ask you to do now is to either send them as a personal message on Geekvolution or to go to geekvolution.com, go to the contact page, put it in the box there, and whoever gets each of these questions right first that I see, I will mention on next week's episode. Dan, thanks a bunch for doing this with me.
Thanks for having me. I had a great time discussing this with you. I had a great time watching the episode, and I think we're in for a real treat every week. I think I'm going to really enjoy this show and doing this discussion with you. It's going to be awesome.
Me too. I feel like I am becoming initiated to what is probably going to become one of my new favorite characters. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
We should review some Flash at some point when if we can get around to it. I would love to show you Wade and John's stuff. I think you'd love it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Once again, thanks for listening, folks. We will try to be on camera next time if at all possible, and we'll see you again next week. I'm Captain Logan,
And I'm Dan.